this meeting of the Arlington Select Board on March 4th, 2024. I am Select Board Chair Eric Helmuth. Tonight's meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format consistent with provisions in state law for remote participation in public meetings. Before we begin, please note the following. This meeting is being conducted in the Select Board chambers and over Zoom. It is being recorded and simultaneously broadcasted on ACMi. People wishing to join the meeting by Zoom may find information on how to do so on the town's website. People participating either in person or by Zoom are reminded that you may be visible to others, and that if you wish to participate, we ask you to provide your full name and place of residence in the interest of developing a record of the meeting. Both Zoom participants and people watching on ACMi can follow the posted agenda materials found on the town's website, specifically the Select Board Agendas and Minutes page. If technical difficulties sever the remote connection to one or more participants and efforts to reconnect within a reasonable period of time would fail, the in-person meeting will continue at the discretion of the chair, provided that a quorum of the board is physically present. Zoom participants are encouraged to retain the phone number provided in their confirmation email to use as a backup audio connection to the meeting. There will be a number of opportunities for public comment at tonight's meeting. If you are attending by Zoom and want to participate, when I announce public comment for that item, please raise your hand in Zoom. If you do not know how to raise your hand in Zoom, now would be an excellent time to Google for how to do so. Let's see how much of the town's business we can get done tonight. I'm pleased to welcome for our first agenda item Ms. Sarah Montague, our Arlington representative on the Minuteman High School Committee, who has kindly agreed to come to us tonight and give us an update on the Minuteman. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see you all in person, in
Really
real
good to
life
see
again.
you.
I appreciate the opportunity. So for the benefit of the viewing public, I prepared a couple of remarks to be as efficient as possible. So on February 7th, I sent you all an email to give you a high-level update of both where we are with the budget process as well as the superintendent search. So I am on the finance subcommittee for Minuteman School Committee, and I have participated along with my colleagues in reviewing 4 versions of the budget. Al Tosti, who is a member of the Town of Arlington Finance Committee, has been involved along the way. I've met him virtually. He's also been in our budget meetings, and he has submitted questions in advance that the interim superintendent and the business manager have addressed. They've addressed those in a PowerPoint presentation, which was sent to Al today ahead of Monday's meeting with interim superintendent Kevin Mahoney, our business manager, and myself. So that's the status on that. There should not be any gotcha surprise moments. The other update is on the superintendent search. So since my email to all of you, I am really pleased to report that we have deliberated the 3 finalists. The whole process from beginning to end was highly collaborative. It included all the necessary stakeholders, parents, teachers. We had a search subcommittee that was comprised of some of my colleagues on the subcommittee, on the school committee, as well as select parents and teachers that raised their hand. The 3 candidates had town meetings at the school, which were recorded. So teachers and parents could go in person. They were also individually recorded. When each of the 3 candidates finished those town meetings, and they were uploaded to a secure portal where the parents and the teachers could then review them if they hadn't seen it, or review it again if they had any questions. And then we had an electronic form that captured people's submissions, comments, questions, concerns, whatever. So that's both teachers and parents. We deliberated with the 3 finalists. Those were recorded as well. It was totally in compliance with Mass Open Meeting Law. And we also recorded, in 1 week, we saw all 3 finalists in deliberation. At the end of that week, we uploaded those recordings onto the Minuteman School Committee site so that anyone that was not on the Zoom call or not in person with us at the school in Lexington could review. In that deliberation, we successfully selected one candidate. Individuals in the search committee, along with our chair, left the room, called her, made an offer, and I'm pleased to say that Heidi Driscoll, who is currently the assistant superintendent for the Situate district, has accepted, and she also has technical VOTEC experience. So we're in negotiations.
Thank you so very much. And I'll turn to the board for any questions or discussion. Mrs. Mahan.
First up, thank you to the chair and Ms. Montague for giving us that update. Look forward to future updates when applicable or necessary. Do you believe, and it's okay if we don't have an answer tonight, but come town meeting and when we get to budget night, and we usually have the dedicated night for Arlington schools and Minuteman, do you believe Ms. Driscoll will be there or Mr. Mahoney, or that's still being discussed? To present on behalf of Minuteman, and also answer the question, just as a heads up to whomever it is, it seems to come up pretty annually, Arlington students, and if there's a waiting list and what the status of that is for
Right,
Arlington. But
right.
do you know yet who you
So
anticipate?
I'm hearing a two-part question, so let me address the first part first. I don't recall the exact date of the town meeting. Do you know what the date is?
It would probably be a Wednesday, second week in May, but don't hold me to that. It'd probably be sometime in May. Could be the
Okay.
first week, second
So
week.
part of our negotiation would be to ask Ms. Driscoll to spend time with the school and the interim superintendent. And so depending upon the timing of that and the town meeting in Arlington, it would either be Ms. Driscoll or Mr. Mahoney or a combination of two. He has the institutional knowledge that's so valuable. So that's part one. And then part two, we would probably be, I know that we'll be prepared to give you an update at that time of what the enrollment numbers are looking like. So the school sent out the acceptance notices, and then what happens is there's always a period of time where we might hear that some students change their mind. So we should have a good handle of that. And then, as you may recall, freshmen can come in and within the first couple of weeks, for whatever reason, maybe they want to join the other school's soccer team, decide to go back and go to Arlington High School instead. So is that helpful?
Nope, that's perfect. Just want to make sure that questions, since there's a couple of new people, or, although Mr. Mahoney's been with Minuteman for a while, so I'm sure he's aware that question, especially now, which the good news is, it's the brand-new school and the great curriculum and course offerings that, I guess the good news would be that so many are applying to have a waiting list, so, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and I think what's great is there's great choices for all of our students in Arlington. There's Arlington High School and there's Minuteman. So I think it's a win-win for our citizens, frankly.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other, Mr. DeCoursey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Montague, for the presentation tonight and for keeping us informed through the email. And just wondering, since you've been on the committee, you came in with a lot of knowledge about the district. We saw that during the interview process. But anything new you have learned that surprised you or reinforced your feelings about Minuteman since you began?
That's a really excellent question. I have an outstanding appreciation for both sides of the fence, if you will. Part of my training was to take the course forward, the charter forward. It's basically all of the educational requirements to be a school committee member. So I have a greater appreciation for Mass open meeting laws. And I have my budget Bible.
Right.
So I'm really trying to familiarize myself with what's been done in the past that has implications for the current day and moving forward. And I will say that the acronyms, I come from the private sector, industry sector, and there's acronyms everywhere, right? So I don't want to think that an acronym I'm hearing relates to an acronym I know from a different part of my life. So having this and the glossary of terms and all of that is immensely helpful to me.
Great, thank you. And just one other question,
Of course,
before, Mr. Chairman. So it looks as if next year the projected enrollment will hit the maximum, the 698, I think, is what the capacity of the building is. And so I know there's probably room on the margins, but is there any, has there been any discussion since you started about talking to other communities about possibly joining the district, or is the feeling because the member towns are taking up 98% of the seats, that's what it's going to be for a while?
The trend is the member towns are ticking up, and you'll be able to see that data conclusively in the documentation that Al Tosti received today.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments?
I guess I didn't.
Mr. Dickens?
Yeah, I didn't understand that answer. So is it the number of students in each member town is ticking up, or the number of towns is ticking up?
The nine towns that are part of the district, we're seeing a trend over time where the towns that are eligible to send their students
Okay.
to Minuteman High School is trending upward. The non-participating towns in the district are trending downward.
Okay, all right. That's what I thought your question is. So it's trending up. So you're at 9 now, and you're thinking it'll be at. So what is the number now? 9?
9 towns
Yeah.
are currently in the mix, right, with Arlington and Lexington being the 2 towns that have the highest number of students enrolled at Minuteman High School.
Okay, and that's 9 from what? So what was it like a couple years ago?
We have all the historic data. I don't have it memorized, but I'm happy to make sure that you all get a copy of it.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of the trend. That's all.
Yeah.
Like at its peak, it was 16 communities.
Ooh, okay, all
And
right.
7
Yeah.
left
Okay.
with the new agreement.
Okay, all right. So it's just a curiosity question. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's
No,
just that-
no, that's okay. There's a
Yeah.
lot of really rich history to this. There really is.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Thank you very much for coming.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
your
Thanks for the
service.
opportunity.
All right. That brings us to the item 3. We have 3 coming items for approval, and we'll start with the storm drain mural painting project. And we believe we have Lori Bogdan. Good evening. And do we have anything to display on this? We'll bring some slides up in the upper monitor and show the people at home. Good evening. If you just introduce yourself and describe briefly, just be that we appreciate the memo. Describe the
Sure.
request.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you.
I'm Laurie Bogdan, and I live in East Arlington, and I've been active for the last several years with the Arts Arlington program. I'm the one that is in charge of the utility box painting project, too, which I'm sure you've all enjoyed, I hope. And here we are with another idea for our town to enrich the town.
And thank you very much. In addition to what was in our packets, we had additional 3 sites that you wish to have approved. And so those are on the board's table tonight. They've also been added to Nova's agenda for the public.
Great, thank you.
So, great. Well, I think we'll just start with, we'll see if there's any questions or comments from the town manager.
No, I just wanted to add, I think this is a great idea. It seems to be something that's well established in a number of places across the country, so should draw a good amount of attention to these locations.
Excellent, thank you. I'll now turn to the board for discussion motions. Mr. Dickens.
I'm happy to move approval. You know, I along with many others, we really enjoyed the utility boxes, you know, so, but I have a couple questions. So is there a problem in Arlington with stormwater from the drains?
They do have a storm drain adoption program
Oh.
that they're trying to encourage. There's, along with dumping, which I don't think happens so much in this town, the drains get clogged
Right.
often with leaves and other debris, and new to me, but when that goes down, the tannins and things with the leaves, that can also disturb the waterways in town.
Okay, gotcha. No, so, I mean, despite whether there's a problem or not, I think it's really
And
good.
we want to bring awareness to all the 5 waterways that we have.
Right, right. And so these sites are selected for their visibility?
It's twofold.
Yeah.
I want them to be visible, so at least people, pedestrians walking by, students going to school will see them and become aware of the program, you know, the issue that we have. And traffic and visibility, that's why I picked them. And they also have to be paintable.
Yeah.
So the sidewalk that's near them has to be in okay condition. They'll vary, they won't all be square. You know, there are some triangular shaped areas. So I wanted a good variety of students. That's why you see in here, we might divide this into a 2-year project. But some of them are at schools, some of them are in high-trafficked areas. And I also wanted to hit each section of town out of fairness. Arts Arlington likes to get Cultural District, East, Heights.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm still looking for a second.
Second.
Mr. Hurd?
Yep.
Any further discussion? I must say, the utility boxes are just a delight, and I love public art in general, but I love these. And I think you've done a fantastic job coordinating those. They look great. It's just a win-win, and I look forward to the extension of this. I think it's a really fun project, and will bring some well-needed attention to our stormwater and
Great.
where it goes. All right, so on a motion by Mr. Diggins, seconded by Mr. Hurd, all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we have item 4, Patriots Day celebration in Whittemore Park for a request on April 15th of this year by the Cyrus Dallin Art Museum. And do we have Ms. Lavelle here or in Zoom to speak to this by any chance? There we go. Yep.
Excuse me.
There we go. Good evening, Ms. Lavelle. You can turn your camera on if you wish and unmute yourself. Hi, good to see you. Welcome. If you
Hello,
could just
hi everybody.
Yeah, just introduce yourself again and just briefly review your request.
Yes, I'm Heather Lavelle. I'm the director of the Cyrus Dallin Art Museum. And our request is the use of Whittemore Park for April 15th from 9 to 12:30. We're having a Patriots Day celebration in the park. The actual event is from 10 to noon. And we are setting up around 9:30, and probably will finish up around 12:30. And it's free, family friendly. We're going to have some poetry presentations. We have a member who will be reading Longfellow's Paul Revere's Ride, and then we'll have another person read Cyrus Dallin's parody of Longfellow's poem about about his battle to get the Paul Revere statue erected in Boston. And then we'll have some other folks talk about what it was like in Arlington in the 18th century and what they would have witnessed that day in 1775. And then after that, the museum will be open for tours. We have recently negotiated a 3-year loan for a prototype of Cyrus Dallin's 6th model for the monument, which we have on view now at the museum. So people will be able to compare and contrast, because we already have number 5. So they'll be able to see them both together for the first time. And that's pretty much the gist of the event. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much. That's, I think, is a terrific idea, especially for the day. And I will now turn to the board. Mr. Hurd.
Thank you. Move approval. Look forward to the event. I'll actually likely be reading Longfellow's Ride, Paul Revere's Ride, about a block down around that same time that day.
Yep.
I don't know, this kind of falls in a whole crux of events that we have planned for that weekend, for Patriots Day weekend. One of the events that we had kicked around that I think is still in process is a potential beer garden in Whittemore Park. It would be in the afternoon of that day after we do the event at Arlington, at Town Hall. I mean, I think we can kind of plan around that. I mean, assuming that they stick to the time frame that's presented, it shouldn't be an issue unless, I don't know if the town manager has any thoughts on it, but I think the plan was around 1 o'clock. And I'm not sure what time they try to set up, but I mean, I'm happy to approve this and we can kind of work around it, but that was part of the events that we had planned both for this year and the following year. I think we're looking at 2 beer gardens, one on Saturday, one on Monday, with one request being at the Historical Society at the Jason Russell House on Saturday, and at Whittemore Park on Monday. And again, it would be in the afternoon following the event at Town Hall, but just to put that on the radar. In the event that one entity is not talking to the other, we have control, this board has approval control over Whittemore Park, but certainly the Cyrus Dallin Museum is right there as well and should know of the events that we have planned. So just throwing that out there. I don't know if there's any issues.
Yeah, no, we're happy. We love to have events in the park, and we're happy to co-promote pretty much anything that happens in the park that's a community event too. So it's good to know. And we've been in touch with ATED about this, coordinating with them. But I hadn't heard about the beer garden. So there shouldn't be any conflict. We should be done with the park, we should be done by 11. So
Sure. Okay.
I don't anticipate any problems.
Is that it?
Yep. So,
Mr. Diggins?
Yes, I will second it. So I was wondering if there were going to be 2 events that day, so the guy on the horse might get confused, so hopefully he goes to the right event, so.
well, he's usually late, so I'm sure this event will be cleared out long before that. We'll be halfway through the beer garden.
Any further
Yeah,
discussion?
he comes after. He's good. We wave to him as he but there won't be any conflict with that event either. He'll meet people at Town Hall as usual.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Hurd and seconded by Mr. Diggins. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is a 5-0 vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Meyer, you can bring in Mr. Like for the next item. So item 5, we have placement of 2 monitoring wells, a request on town property. And we have joining us by Zoom momentarily Christopher Like from the Arlington Land Trust. We also have Ms. Clarissa Rowe in the room, also to be available. And Mr. Like, I think when you're, yep, looks like he's here, so you can unmute yourself and enable your video if you wish. Good evening, sir.
Hopefully that works.
Yeah, we got you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Like, and I'm the president of the Arlington Land Trust. The Land Trust is here this evening to request permission to place 2 monitoring wells on the town property that abuts the Mugar site where the proposed Thorndike Place development would be built. This is on Dorothy Road at the southern end of Dorothy Road. The purpose of the monitoring wells would be to provide a sort of objective reference point for accurately measuring the groundwater levels in the immediate area. As I think everybody probably knows, the groundwater levels are extremely important. It's extremely important to have accurate measurements in evaluating the proposed development. And we are concerned that the measurements that have been provided by the developer are not reliable and do not comply with state requirements. So our goal would be to provide a reference point which would enable folks to evaluate the accuracy of the developer's measurements. The pipes, the wells installing the wells is a pretty small matter. Basically a matter of sinking 6-inch PVC pipe the pipe would be flush with the ground, so it wouldn't protrude. And the pipe would have, in the pipe would be placed a piezometer, which is a pressure measurement device that provides a reliable way of determining groundwater levels. So that's our ask. The work would be done by Vetrana Construction, which is a licensed, bonded, experienced contractor, and would obviously be done under town supervision.
Thank you. Ms. Rhoda, do you have anything to add?
No, I can just answer questions. Scott Horsley will be on site on Friday to double check, and he is our hydrologist consultant, a very knowledgeable man, as I'm sure you all have read about. And he will be conferring with the contractor in the town to make sure that the wells are in the right place, which is very important to us. And we need to work out a system of monitoring the wells with the town. We're going to have a lot of rain this week. One of the things that has happened is March, April, and sometimes May are the high water months, and that's why it's very important to monitor these wells, but also to have the developer monitor the wells that are already installed and should be installed. But I'll do the land trust stuff first. So I'm here to answer any questions you all have.
Okay. I'll start with turning to Mr. Horsley.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to move approval and thank Mr. Like and Ms. Rowe in the Land Trust for their advocacy for the Mugar site over the years, and particularly in monitoring the Conservation Commission hearings and in making this request. And as I had told the board previously, I've been following this as well, and I was really impressed with the consultant that the Land Trust had engaged, Mr. Horsley, and that was one of his recommendations that he made back in November and more recently at the Conservation Commission meetings is for the applicant to install monitoring wells, but I think the request here is more of a check within the right-of-way, and Dorothy Road is a public way that was approved, accepted in 1939, so there is room to put the wells. But if I could ask Mr. Feeney, we attached a diagram that was done, I'm not sure what consultant did it originally, but it was in Mr. Horsley's report, and you can see a series of TP up to 8 test pits on the site, and what's happening, or what had happened as reported by Mr. Horsley is there's a series of 5 test pits which would, if approved, there would be townhomes along Dorothy Road. Test pits 7 and 8 are really where a lot of the issues have arisen. Test pit 7 in particular, where the data and what's being reported appears to be inconsistent with test pits in other areas. And what Mr. Horsley has said very persuasively at the Conservation Commission meetings is when you have these inconsistencies and when some of your soil information is inconsistent, the best thing to do is to have monitoring wells. And so at the last Conservation Commission meeting, a request was made of the applicant to install wells at these sites, particularly at Test Pit 7. That area there, which is shaded, is a large infiltration system if the project is ever approved. And it's critical because that's where the groundwater seeps through back into the soils. But if the groundwater level is too high and interferes with the infiltration system, it won't work, and there'll be widespread flooding. And this has been a major issue. And as I understand the land trust request, and Ms. Rome, like you can elaborate, what you're really seeking to do here is have wells nearby, take a look at readings over a period of time, because March, April, and May are your high groundwater months, and just see how that compares and how that fluctuates to what's being reported. Is that what you're looking to do?
Yes, and also compare it. There's a special well in Lexington that we want to compare the results
Okay.
with.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Chris.
Mr. Light?
No, that's fine, yeah. Test Pit 7 is really the the place where some of the problems with the measurements that have been conducted are clearest. That says that the groundwater level there is below sea level. That minus 0.5 says the groundwater level is below sea level. This is, in our experts' words, something he hasn't encountered in 30 years of measuring groundwater. So, yet this is a measurement that the developer is relying on. So, we think it's very important to have continuously monitored wells, not these point-in-time measurements which the developer has taken, in order to get a really accurate idea of seasonal high groundwater.
Thank you. And if I could, the last thing I'd like to say, I mean, given the significance of this issue, one of the most important issues in this whole MUGAR development process, what's the groundwater level, how are we going to protect the area, actual data is what's necessary. And,
Yes.
and again, this is what experts have said, and so anything that we can do to assist that within the private way, I certainly am happy to support. So
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Mahan.
Thank you. I'll definitely second that motion. And just sort of a process question. I'm probably correct that Thorndike Place, their developers did their own wells, and I don't know how much veracity or question of veracity I would have on that. And I appreciate that the Land Trust is having, I think you said Vetrano, come out and do a more appropriate study in terms of what the groundwater level is out there. I did not zoom in on the last Conservation Commission meeting, but I did mail my Land Trust renewal this morning at the post office. Thank you, Ms. Rowe, for your extra special stationery. But my question is, the process question would be, after May, when the results are compiled and compared, which may go into June, the process question would be, am I correct that Thorndike Place had their own consultant that did what they thought was adequate, which myself and others think is woefully inadequate, that this information will go to the Conservation Commission to be weighed against that, or, which I anticipate the answer would probably be no, are the developers of Thorndike Place sort of agreeing and acquiescing that this is something that should be done, and they also will stand by the results of the study afterwards?
Mr. Lake? Whichever you want to.
I think one of the things, the last Conservation Commission meeting, the Conservation Commission hasn't put in writing to the developer that the wells, that one well needs to be closer to TP7. It's really, their existing wells are not placed well. That needs to be in writing to the developer. The developer said that they'll respond once they get that in writing. I know this is a period of transition with David Morgan just coming back today, but we're hounding them.
Yeah, just to add to that, technically, the developer has not put in place continuously monitored wells. These TP here stands for test pit, and those are pits that were dug and one measurement was taken on one day, and then the test pit was closed up. And the measurements that you see on this chart are one-day measurements and not the results of continuous 3-month monitoring.
Yeah.
I think that the Conservation Commission is going to request that the developers themselves do proper 3-month monitoring wells, but given the kind of haphazard way that the developer has approached the groundwater measurement here, we think it's important to have an objective external measurement, pretty much whatever happens. And that will be, the results of that measurement will be shared with the Conservation Commission and the developer. You know, our goal is to be completely above board in presenting the data to everyone.
A test pit is basically a hole in the ground. It rarely goes below 12 inches or 18 inches. A monitoring well is usually at least 3 feet deep. So in a week like this, when there's going to be a lot of rain, it's a very different kind of reading, and that's why the monitoring wells that we're proposing and also that the town should be fussing about need to be in place.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hurd.
Happy to support this. I just want to thank everyone for their continued efforts on this to, not being the expert in groundwater and test pits. I'm just glad that there's much smarter people than I that are advocating on behalf of the town to make sure that we can do what we can to,
Yeah,
both fight the project, but to steer it in the right direction in
Thank
any
you.
way possible and
And
protect
then-
the people around there.
the coalition has been really extraordinarily helpful to the land trust. I'm kind of the bridge between both, but they're just really people that really care about it a lot, so thank you.
And I'm happy to support it too, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. I'm happy to support it too, and looking forward to the study itself. At that point, I'll probably have some questions, and I'll be on the phone with you to save everyone here
Yeah.
time. It'll just be mostly a whole bunch of curiosity questions about the methodology. I mean, is there a report that comes with that?
Is there what?
Is there a report that comes with that table? Or
There was one, but that's the test pits, not the monitoring wells. It is
Right.
in some of the information that they've put before. The monitoring wells were not monitored as it, they probably haven't been monitoring them,
right,
so we haven't seen any data
right,
lately. We
Right.
didn't see any from last spring. We need to see some for this spring.
okay, I understand. I mean, I was just kind of curious as to what they've written up with respect to this.
Yeah.
So if I go to a COMCOM meeting agenda, I can, okay, great, I'll
Yeah.
look. I was just looking at the last meeting, and I didn't see it wasn't obvious to me, but I'll look around some more, so.
Well, these water issues are complicated.
Yeah.
And it's not that we're smarter or anything. So, my son called me today, he had a sight problem, and he sent me pictures. He said, "What should I do here, Mom?" So,
I believe Mr. Feeney had something to contribute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask if, as the board considers this proposal, obviously there's a baseline requirement that the contractor perform a dig safe and mark it out so we can ensure there are no conflicts with underground utilities. But I think, thinking longer term, whenever the time comes that the wells no longer have any value or serve a purpose, that the land trust be ultimately responsible for helping they be decommissioned or abandoned in place, so there's no future confusion about what exists under that access hatch that will be
Absolutely.
installed at grade.
absolutely.
Sure, of course, absolutely.
And what we would do is take off the top, take the thing that I can't pronounce out.
Izamita?
And then put in, gravel, crushed stone.
And Mr. Corson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say one other thing. This vote and what we're being asked to approve, right now, the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over what is a notice of intent that the applicant has filed. This is not an attempt by the board to interfere with that process at all. What it is a request to get more information surrounding the site. The more data, the better, but we certainly respect the work that the Conservation
Yes,
Commission is doing.
absolutely.
They have jurisdiction over the site. They're making their own requests. So just to be clear to the public, this isn't us trying to interfere in
No,
that
no,
process.
right.
It's responding to the request here.
And I actually called David Morgan today to sort of inform, because it's his first day back, poor man, to inform him what the Land Trust was trying to do and to talk to him about it so there wasn't any confusion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And, I will happily pile on with my support. I think this really speaks to one of the very core reasons why this board and the town has had such deep concern about this proposal from the very beginning, and that is the potential to make the flooding problem worse. And so, I think that I really applaud the initiative shown by the Land Trust and the neighbors to get better data, as Mr. DeCoursey said. So I think we're ready for a vote on a motion to approve by Mr. DeCoursey and seconded by Mrs. Mahan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Appreciate it.
we can, I think we can take the map down. Here we go. As much as we love test pits now. I'll be dreaming about those tonight.
Every time I heard TP, I thought of the high school,
Something
what
else,
they
that's
do,
right.
but that's test pit, not the other one.
All right, that's now's when we speed up the pace a little bit and we knock off 4 agenda items in one vote. We have the consent agenda, the approval of the minutes of the meeting from February the 5th, a request for a contractor drain layer license by USA Excavating, a request for a special one-day beer and wine license by Andy Doan at the Director of Arlington Eats for the Beats for the Eats fundraiser, and request for an extension of Black History Month banners by Jillian Harvey, Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Equity and Inclusion for the town of Arlington. And I'll turn the board. Mrs. Mahan.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve, and I should, before we vote, just remind the public that if you're interested in the details of these, that information is available online in the Select Board Agendas and Minutes page. So we have a motion to approve by Mrs. Mahan, and seconded by Mr. Hurd. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a 5-0 affirmative vote. Brings us to item 10, appointments. So we have one appointment this evening to the Historic District Commission, the Jason and Gray Historic District. Please, I'm guessing this is Kenneth Lubar.
I'm Ken Lubar.
We are pleased to have you. If you just introduce yourself and just say a few words about your interest in serving. We do have your materials, and we're grateful to have read those.
Sure. I'm Ken Lubar. I've lived in Arlington for more than 20 years. Live in the Jason Gray Historic District, and that's the area that I have applied for. I know the joys and pains of living in a historic house. And I'm cognizant of, maintaining historic houses and maintaining historic neighborhoods. Interested in it, don't have a formal education background, but have been studying it, participated and listened into a lot of the historic district meetings, excited about it, and think I could provide some insight into it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And I'll now turn to the board for any motions or questions. Mrs. Mahan?
First, I would like to move approval and thank Mr. Lubar, Ken, for, on top of everything else that you're doing in there, according to your resume, CV. And it's interesting, last meeting and this meeting, we kind of see a common theme with the trustees of reservation and the Appalachian Mountain Club. There's sort of a lot of crossover, but I think there's great expertise for people who are affiliated with those organizations that the town can benefit from. And I kind of chuckled. I do not, nor have I ever lived in a historic home, but have many friends who do, and I think that's, it's not a requirement, but it certainly is an extra benefit you have, sort of bringing that experience there with you. And obviously, you've had some interface with the Historic District Commission to date as a homeowner, but I assume you're also have been attending sort of ad hoc or?
I have attended meetings. I've applied. I've been for various changes to our house. I've listened in on other meetings, both in the neighborhood and elsewhere. So I've been a not hardcore attendee, but an occasional attendee, and hope to hit 100% attendance record at the meetings.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Diggins?
Yeah, I'm happy to second, and different kinds of educational backgrounds is part of the diversity, so I think you will bring me that kind of diversity to the commission, But you had me at this line, However, the urge to preserve everything and freeze the past needs to be carefully balanced with the concerns of creating more affordable housing and more affordable, sorry, I lost my place, you know, and the reality of maintaining historic residences, you know, so I mean, for me, you get it, you know, and so we do have to maintain that balance, you know, and you appreciate that, and I appreciate someone who appreciates that, so thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Diggins stole my thunder. I was going to quote the same passage from your letter. I recommend Ken's very thoughtful letter to us. It's available in the Select Board Agenda's minutes and page, and I guess that's just, I'm going to sponsor that tonight to promote that for the public. But that's where all the good stuff is. But I really do appreciate that sensitivity to, yes, you have to fulfill your mission, and that's the purpose of the historic districts, but there are realities of the housing market that we desperately need, and especially for affordable housing, and as you say, the realities of maintaining the houses. So I'm glad to know that you go into this as a lover of historic architecture and of history, but also as a homeowner.
Yes.
So I encourage you to continue with that passion for that balance. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. We have a motion to appoint by Mrs. Mahan and seconded by Mr. Diggins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is 5-0, unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to our licenses and permits section of the meeting. So we have two applications for common victualler license tonight. We're going to start with the Makalu Nepali restaurant. So if we have the representative here, come on up. And good evening, sir. If you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business and what's going on.
I'm Sam. My buddy lived here in Arlington for a good amount of years, so he couldn't do it. I came here. I have a restaurant in Somerville, the House of Kebab. So we want to open it. We're good to go, and then looking for the license.
And I will now turn to the board for motions and discussion. Mrs. Mahan.
First, I would like to move approval and say thank you for coming to Arlington. We're all very well versed with how challenging the restaurant business can be and the commitment that lies therein. And it's encouraging to hear that you already are familiar with it in Somerville. And I will say my 3 grandsons, who are half Nepalese.
Oh, they are?
Will be your yes.
All right, there we go. That's exciting.
Joshis. They'll be.
Yeah, I'm there one myself too, so. Yeah.
Okay, it's amazing how much the small world it is.
Very
So,
small, very small.
They've sort of given me my love, although I really haven't mastered the Nepalese or Indian cuisine. I'm trying, my daughter
We're
wants.
here, so give us a try.
Yeah. It's the spices and knowing where to get.
We'll start from mild and we'll add to it.
Yeah. I look forward to and wish you all the success and anything this board can do to help assist you going forward, besides bringing my 3 grandsons to be your best critics. Look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you so much. Everyone's invited.
Second.
Second. Okay, do we have any discussion with the board? Any comments from the town manager? Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mrs. Mahan and seconded by Mr. Hurd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 vote. Good luck with your business. Thank you
Thank
for
you very
choosing
much.
Arlington.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, now we have item 12 for approval, common victualler license, Boston Pizza and Gyro, 1323 Massachusetts Avenue. Mr. Bezant, yes, thank you. You'll have to help us pronounce your name correctly. Good evening, and please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the application.
No, I do myself. I do it myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you tell us about your business and about the application tonight?
Okay, about what?
About the application for the common victualler license. You're with the Boston Pizza and Gyro?
Yes.
Yeah.
For this first time I come, I didn't know really what I need to do. Yes. You guys have any question I can answer?
I think I'm going to actually start, so thank you, sir. I'm going to start with the town manager to bring us, the board up to date on the sequence of events that have transpired, I think, over the last year. So we'll give you a chance to comment after the
Yes, this
town manager
time.
makes his presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with this particular establishment located at 1323 Mass Ave, I understand there was a change of ownership that took place sometime on or about December of 2022 or January of 2023. At that point in time, the new owner had applied for a certificate of occupancy from Inspectional Services. They'd also applied for a permit to operate a food establishment from the Arlington Health Department, and the establishment had also sought or applied for initially an application for a common vittler's license at the Select Board's office. I understand that shortly thereafter, the establishment was placed for a hearing in February of 2023, at which point the applicant did not appear for their hearing, and frankly, the common vittler's license therefore was never technically granted. However, the establishment has stayed in operation since that time, and shortly after the new year, following our renewal period, when it was learned that, the common vic license, as we know it, had not technically been issued, Select Board staff, again, shortly after the new year, began reaching out to the owner to request an updated application material and to schedule a hearing with this board. Unfortunately, the materials weren't submitted in as timely a manner as would be hoped for. Inspectional Services then became involved and started issuing formal letters saying, frankly, this, you need to obtain this license, and if you don't, it could lead to issues with your certificate of occupancy. So after a few rounds of contact with the applicant, again, the applicant appeared at the Select Board office and submitted a revised application for the common vittler license, and on Friday of last week signed for the departmental inspection reports that were included with the Select Board's packet for this meeting. And I would note that nearly each department that submitted an inspection report for this establishment did notice items that were not in compliance, save for the police department, who represented no issues. With respect to the fire department, one caveat that I will note that was perhaps not known at the time the fire department prepared that inspection report was that a routine mercantile inspection was conducted by AFD in December of 2023. No violations were noted at that time. I know the inspection report references no inspections since 2021. That was simply a lag in that inspection report finding its way into the software that the fire department uses. But with that being said, the inspection that was conducted would not necessarily meet the same criteria of the inspection that the fire department would conduct for a change of ownership, so that item remains outstanding. There are a few issues with, as noted in the Inspectional Services report, with signage at the establishment being out of compliance with the Town of Arlington's zoning bylaw, so those items remain to be addressed. And then finally, I would note the Health Department, similarly in their report, noted that they have been conducting a number of inspections at this establishment since it received its permit to operate at the sort of start of calendar year 2023, and have noted a number of serious but also repeat violations. And in reviewing that report with the Director of Public Health in advance of this meeting, I did learn that the the Health Department has been in touch with the applicant and scheduled an administrative hearing to be held on March 7th with respect to the ongoing repeat and critical violations at this establishment, at which point they would likely enter into some sort of plan that involved close monitoring, outside consultancy, and just developing a path and a plan to bring the establishment into compliance with the food code. And I would say that sort of sums, where we've been, and then also where we're at today. And I think that the board you know, if they sought a recommendation, I think there's a few things that I would advise the board to consider this evening.
Thank you. And forgive me if you've already covered this, but can you brief us on the status of the certificate of occupancy now? And I believe there's a temporary one in effect.
Temporary one in effect through, I believe, March 15th.
And that was issued temporarily with the provision that we would be here tonight.
Correct.
To process this application, okay. Okay, and before I turn to the board, I ask the applicant if you prefer, you have any comment on the presentation by Mr. Feeney summarizing the facts over the last year, and especially the last month.
Yes, I'm missing, yes. Lastly, I'm missing.
Do you have any comments, or do you wish to say anything at this time in response to the situation that he described?
Okay.
Do you understand the presentation by Mr.
Yes, I understand for him, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to turn to the board, and Mr. DeCoursey, did you want to lead off?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so as I looked at the inspection reports here and given the history, this is a unique situation in terms of the licensing or a license not being granted a year ago. I see a number of things in the reports, and it seems to me that, just to be absolutely clear, it seems like something's going to happen this Thursday with the Board of Health. There's an inspection that the fire department would like to undertake at some point, and there's also an issue with your signs. It seems to me, given where things are and what needs to be done, I'd be inclined to continue this hearing until March 18th, but just maybe after the meeting or tomorrow, ask you to either work through our board, maybe through the town manager's office, so that everybody is in agreement as to what needs to be done in order for you to have this license renewed or to receive this license, because there's a number of things, and unlike the last restaurant that was here, every one of the inspection reports was okay. They checked all the boxes, that the fire department had been out, they'd done the inspection. The health department didn't have any issues. There was no sign issues. Here, there are issues. I don't think it would be appropriate to vote up or down on the license tonight, but I think the next 2 weeks are critical, so that if you come back, if the board is so inclined, if you come back in 2 weeks, we know exactly where things stand with the inspection reports, and hopefully you're in compliance at that point, because I will tell you, without that being addressed, it may be difficult for this board to go ahead with the next step on the license. So I would move for a continuance until March 18th, and maybe with a request to Mr. Champa to extend that temporary certificate of occupancy through the date of our meeting, so there's no issue in terms of that expiring on the 15th and our meeting being the following Monday.
Okay, 2 weeks I'm gonna be come back?
Well, 2 weeks you're going to come back, but tomorrow,
Yes.
please be in touch through, is it okay through the town manager's office? Just so we're very clear, that you're clear and we're clear as a town, what needs to be done and what has to happen, because there's a number of town departments that need to come through the property, and there's some things that you're going to have to do as well. So if the board votes it, you'd come back on the 18th, and we'd see where things
I
stand.
got you, yeah. I got you.
Yeah, I think I wanted, before I turn to the rest of my colleagues, I want to emphasize and actually ask the town's attorney a question, to be clear that, notwithstanding that this common victualer's license was not pursued last year, and the restaurant has been operating, am I correct in my understanding that it is not legal right now, that there's not, well, you correct me in the right language, but right now, you're not supposed to be operating a restaurant without this license. Is that correct, Attorney Cunningham?
That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Chair. Under the provisions of Chapter 140, Section 19 through 21, establishments are required to have this common vic license to serve food or drink. So technically, they are in violation right now, and fines could be issued.
Yeah, and I just want to make that point. I think that, speaking for myself as a board member, we're inclined to give you these 2 weeks in recognition that, this has been going on for a year, but it is not legal to operate the restaurant without this license.
Okay, I got you.
So in 2 weeks, I think I would support Mr. DeCourcy's motion. I won't formally second it, but if this were to carry, I think that what's really important is that in 2 weeks, these problems need to be solved, and there needs to be criteria I think the board would want to spell out tonight in order for us to, at least for Mr. DeCourcy and I, to vote for that license. And I think after that point, if the board does not issue that license, you could not operate the restaurant. So that's how important this is to me.
Okay.
Mr. Hurd?
Yeah, I'll second the motion and just say that, I hope you are understanding how important it is to take this board's recommendation and the town staffs and the town departments that you work with. Because there's nothing that we like to see less than repeat violations. And we see someone comes out and tells you you're a violation, and then they come back and you're still in violation. That's a very quick way to lose your business.
Yep.
And so I just want to it seems like over the last year, this hasn't been a priority, but you have to make sure if you want to continue to operate in this town, that you are making everything that is told to you about this business a priority and making sure that you continue to be in compliance. Because even if you get the license in 2 weeks, if you're not continuing to work with the Board of Health and doing what they're saying, then you're not going to be able to operate your business.
Okay.
Mrs. Mahan?
Everything they said, so just want to make sure, so tomorrow,
Don't worry. Yep.
if you could call either our office, which,
I can come physically.
well, either call our office, the Select Board office,
Okay.
which is, when you filled out this,
Yes.
you got this from us, you called us or emailed us.
I have just email.
You have, I'm sorry?
I have just email.
Okay, well, you need to get in contact with someone from the town tomorrow,
Okay.
if you haven't already, but
I got you.
maybe like a double check.
I got you.
Email tomorrow, because you have 3 different departments that you need to,
Yeah.
with the building inspector.
I got you.
So 4 things to tick off. So if you can contact someone, email tomorrow, and find out exactly which of these 4 things you have to get done with the fire department, with the signage planning department, with the Board of Health, and then the building inspector.
I'm sorry, I have a question. I think so. I done for all the paper. I give it to for office here.
Yes, but you filled out the papers.
Yes.
The town looked at your papers, went to the business, some of them, inside or outside, and they said there are things you need to fix for us to give you.
Okay, I can do it.
So
again.
you
Sorry. Yep.
need to contact tomorrow, email, or you can
I got you.
call and just say, what are the 4 things I have to do?
I have to do, yeah.
And they'll give you that information, whether it's a phone call or email,
I got you.
so that you'll be able to come back.
Fine, 2 week.
And, yeah,
Yep.
so there's 3 different parts of the town, 3 different departments, that
Yes.
things, signage, food under Board of Health,
Yes.
and the fire department.
I got you.
So if you
What
could
is the
just.
first one? Sorry. First one?
Pardon me?
Signage, first one?
Yeah, we have a signage zoning bylaw.
Okay, yep.
So that's under the planning department, and they'll let you know what you need to do to make sure your signs, your signage are under the law, the bylaw that we have. So it can be fixed,
Yeah, I got you.
but you have to contact everyone, and they
Contact,
need to
yep.
work with you.
I
So
got
when
you.
you come back in 2 weeks, those 3 departments and the building inspector, that will
Yep.
be all,
Okay,
so you can be ready to do business and you don't have to worry, well, you'll always worry. but-
yes.
Okay, so tomorrow you'll contact someone from the town, either
I got
phone
you.
call or email, and we'll make sure you get all that other info, okay?
I got you.
Thank you, I'm
Thank you.
sorry, I just wanted to make
That's
sure.
fine, yep.
Thank you.
Attorney Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reaffirm what the board's doing here and make sure that people understand this is correct. Although we're here for the discrete issue of the application of the common vic license, the board's consideration of the other actions of other town boards and commissions is entirely appropriate, and this board can consider the totality of the circumstances when coming to a decision on this very discrete issue of the application for the common vic license. So the board's, I guess, informing the applicant correctly that they can consider these other issues when making a decision on your application.
Mr. Dickens.
And it is in consideration of the other issues, especially the food safety one, that, I mean, I am going to go along with the continuance. I'm going to have a hard time voting yes, I mean, in 2 weeks, given the pattern of behavior, especially the food safety. As Mr. Hurd said, I mean, the repeated violations, I mean, are the killer on this. I mean, especially with food. I mean, we don't tolerate, repeats on alcohol, but food, I mean, food safety, from what I gathered, I mean, it's very serious issues. I mean, I don't know how it happened that you went so long without the common vic license. I mean, I think we partly have to look at ourselves, I mean, but it's just, I just have a real bad feeling about this, I mean, and then when I look at the maintenance program, I mean, it's there's really nothing to it, which to me just kind of shows a lack of attention to detail, which is really important, in this kind of business. I mean, so I'll go ahead with it, I mean, but I don't know if I'm going to get to yes, I mean, in 2 weeks, because it seems like we'll have to monitor you for I don't know how long, and then when we stop monitoring you, my sense is that we'll find you in violation again, I mean, and so that's where I am. That's it, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think, Mr. Attorney Cunningham.
To Mr. Diggins's point, I would also note that Chapter 140, Section 9, the allowance of an application for a common vic license is subject to revocation by this board at any time.
Thank you. So I think, thank you for your patience tonight and for coming tonight. I think it's really important that you understand that you'll come back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
But from listening to my other board members, my colleagues here, it sounds to me that you would not, unless all these problems are fixed, that this board is unlikely to grant the license, and you would have to close the business. So is that something you understand?
I have to close.
No, you have to fix.
Okay,
You have
fix,
to
I got you,
fix,
yeah.
So
Yes.
if it's not fixed within 2 weeks,
I got
this
you.
board may vote no on the license, and then you would
Yes.
not be able to operate.
No, I'm gonna do it I have two business I always gonna do it because I know this is not played for.
Yeah, so we want you to succeed.
Yes.
We want you to be able to keep the business open to serve the community.
Yes, of course.
But I think I will echo Mr. Diggins' remarks that particularly the Health Department memo is very concerning to me, that they cited repeat foundation and priority violations that continued as late in January. So those must be addressed, and there must be a plan in place that's acceptable to the Health Department, as well as addressing the sign problems and addressing the fire department inspection as well. All that needs to happen within the 2 weeks.
Yep, I got you.
Okay, good. Any other comments from the town manager or attorney?
Mr. Chair, if I could just add one thing, as it relates to the signage violations, with respect to the 2-week timeframe, when we're in touch, likely sometime tomorrow, what I see the appropriate action being for that 2-week period of time is actually the removal of the violative signs as they stand and the submission of an application for any new signs. It's unlikely that any applicant would be able to proceed all the way through that process within 2 weeks, but what I would deem compliance with respect to the March 18th meeting would be all of the offending signs have been removed, or those that are not in compliance with the bylaw, in at least a submission of an application for new signs, and then it could proceed through the process. But that's what I would deem as, appropriate compliance for March 18th.
Thank you. And I'd make a further request in light of Attorney Cunningham's reminding us that the board has the ability to consider the other department's actions, that particularly with respect to the Health Department, I would request as much detail as you can provide the board on the 18th as to what has transpired between now and then.
Of course.
In the advancement of those objectives.
Yep, and if, Mr. Chair, if I could add to that, at the administrative hearing that is scheduled for March 7th at 10 a.m., it would be expected that some sort of corrective action plan will be devised between Health Department staff and the proprietor of the establishment, and that will generate, essentially a record that will be able to be shared with the board.
Good. All right, thank you very much. So let's go ahead and take our vote then. And so we have a motion to continue this hearing until March 18th by Mr. DeCoursey and seconded by Mr. Hurd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a 5-0 vote in favor for continuance. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you in 2 weeks.
I'll see you guys. Take care. Yep.
Moves us to item 13, future select board meetings, and then we'll get to the warrant articles. So in consultation with the select board office and town manager and town council, today I became persuaded that we really need to add 1 and probably 2 additional meetings just to get through our warrant articles by early April. And so if we could all look at our calendars, and of course mine decided to quit, so I'm going to call up the one on my phone. Technology is just that kind of fun.
As
All
I
right,
said, I
so-
reserve the Mondays.
It was, well, yes, it may.
Are we looking at,
So,
Yes, the
Ms.
starting
Mara, actually,
of
you can help
April?
me out, because we did have a pre-meeting this afternoon, and I'm not seeing this, and if you could talk about some of the early discussions we had to propose to my colleagues here.
Sure. After this meeting, we're going to have 14 warrant articles left to hear. We're hoping to add at least 1, probably 2 meetings at the end of March, beginning of April. The select board draft report to town meeting, we're hoping to have voted by this board on April 8th, which is kind of a deadline for everyone. We are hoping to have the packet pickup later that week. So April 8th is really kind of a cutoff date. So in order to hear the remaining articles, we kind of have to add at least 1, probably 2 meetings. We're hoping for 5, and 4, if that's, we don't want to overload the board and overload the staff. We're looking at the end of March. I know there's some scheduling conflicts, and maybe we're hoping for at least April 1st. I don't know if that date works for the remaining members of the board, but April 1st for at least 1 of the meetings and sometime the last week in March.
And I know the town manager was going to be checking his calendar regarding the 25th. Did you have any new information on that?
I unfortunately am not available on the 25th, Mr. Chair.
So one possibility that the 4 of us discussed, even though it's unconventional, would be, what about Tuesday, the 26th? We did confirm that ACMi is available, and us 4 are available, but what about the rest of the board? So not-
Well, I can zoom in.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
I'll zoom in. Yeah, all right, yeah, that'll work.
so,
Mason,
question? If this is the case, yes. So are we proposing March 26th and April 1st?
That's correct.
we are, and I should say the reason that the 27th would be the obvious Wednesday, but that's candidates' night for, and a couple of us will be busy.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yes.
I'm okay with both those dates.
I can do the 26th, assuming my mother is okay celebrating her birthday on a different night. I'm just kidding.
I think we could put a cake on the table, and, all right.
I have some Winnie the Pooh cake toppers left over. Anyways,
Mr. DeCoursey,
That's fine.
Okay, all right, so I think we'll go with those dates then,
That's
the
perfect.
26th and the 1st. And I'll take pains to tell the public that it's an off day.
Yeah.
Great, and applicants as well. Thank you, everybody, for that. Mr. Feeney?
A quick question for the administrator. Those Zoom conflicts on that Tuesday, huh, with
Yeah, we'll have to check on that.
all right,
I will double check.
Yeah,
all right.
Good,
I
good
don't-
thinking.
I don't think typically there's any meetings on our Zoom that happen on Tuesdays, but
Yeah.
I will
Okay.
confirm and
Right.
make sure that there is no conflict on that day.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Because I'll be counting on it. Right?
Yeah,
Perfect.
Mr. Feeney?
I just wanted to make note, if the schedule is allowing for the Select Board's draft report to be presented at the regularly scheduled April 8th meeting, at that time would also be the first time, I guess, as part of that report, that the board would be seeing the final votes and comments for the 4 warrant article hearings that take place on April 1st. So just wanted to note that at the meeting, we would expect to see the draft report would actually be the first time seeing 4 of the final proposed votes and comments. And as I understand from Ms. Marr, that's, quite commonplace each year, but that I just wanted to call that out.
I think we will have to be sure we do our homework that weekend.
That, or we could maybe, depending on how you schedule the articles, it could be articles that are kind of like the ones we're going to see tonight, where.
Right, yeah, the easy ones, yeah. Good. Yeah, good, thank you very much. Okay, so I think we're set with that, and, if we make extraordinary progress, we may not need the April 1st one. Okay, this brings us to the warrant article hearing. Speaking of annual town meeting, we have 4 articles reviewed for tonight, Articles 7, 12, 13, and 56. Each of these will be a public hearing, which means that after a presentation, we will invite comments by the public, either here in the room or on Zoom. This is the part where I said be ready to raise your hand. Obviously, in the room, that should be self-evident. If on Zoom, you will by now have Googled how to do that. So let's start with Article 7, the proposed bylaw amendment and a betterment bylaw revision, and I'll leave it to Mr. Feeney and team to make the presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, this article obviously was inserted at my request, but was intended on sort of addressing a few discrete issues that have arisen with respect to different betterment projects that have arisen, at least over the course of the past year. The first of which, and there may be even some representatives from the Tower Heights Association, I understand, that wish to speak to it, but that was an issue that was flagged by Select Board staff when a prior project was considered, is that, there are times when a certain grouping of streets, maybe 2 or 3 roads within a much larger association, may be wishing to pursue a betterment for which they are abutters. But as currently written, our bylaw would require a 2/3 threshold vote for each and every household that makes up that association, and that could be hundreds or a couple hundred households, when in fact you're just trying to advance a project that may impact 10 or 20 households. So to be frank, it makes the amount of legwork that's required for the petitioners almost time and cost prohibitive to, certainly seek out, votes of everyone in that association, frankly, for a project that may not impact them in their household. So the proposed changes as written work to address that and have it only be pertinent for abutters for whom are going to benefit from the betterment project. And then secondly, this board may recall that the past few betterment projects that have been petitioned for have been subject to some varying requirement based on the varying level of funding. As of right now, our betterment bylaw requires that a 1/3 deposit or upfront share be collected for each betterment project. The change being proposed is to flip that to be a 2/3 deposit to match the sort of 2/3 threshold for folks who need to vote favorably on advancing the petition. And what that would do would allow the town, through the board, to better project the cash flow and establish a deeper pipeline of the number of projects that can be addressed each construction season. And I tried to address that in the, or illustrate that in the materials that were put forth in your packet. In looking at the 4 projects that we potentially have in the pipeline for the 2024 construction season, and the total dollar value of those projects being just shy of $350,000, if the town were needing to remain providing a 67% share for that project, we would need to have just over $230,000 in the bank to approve those projects. Or conversely, if the town only had to guarantee provision of a 1/3 share for those projects, we would need to have approximately $115,000 to spend. And if we project what our possible funding would be for the 2024 construction season, We have an unencumbered fund balance of $27,000 as of last week. And then we are proposing to again seed the private way fund with a $100,000 warrant article appropriation at this spring's annual town meeting, which we did for fiscal year '22, but as you can see, those funds, given the higher cost of the projects and the number of projects that are being brought before the board, are not lasting many, many years as they had done before. So all that to say, if this bylaw bylaw change was looked upon favorably by the board and ultimately town meeting, given the funding that we would have available for the 2024 construction season, it would put the board in a position, at a minimum, to approve all 4 of the potential betterment projects for 2024. So what I also did was, working with Select Board Office staff, pull up the data from the past 3 years of our experience with private way betterment projects to demonstrate that, in fact, we are seeing a trend towards higher collection rates up front that actually would, at a minimum, meet, but in most instances exceed that which is being proposed for a 67% collection rate. So, trying to demonstrate that, in fact, it may not have a meaningful impact necessarily on the abutters with what they are generally paying upfront as it is, so it doesn't get assessed over the course of 5 years with interest being charged and potentially impacting someone's escrow payments, that people generally are moving towards paying upfront, but that in having that sort of upfront payment rate or collection guaranteed, then as we try to look at these projects on a season-by-season basis, we can better project when someone, if they're willing, able, and looking to do one of these betterment projects, we can project which season their project would be able to fall into, so that it's not as reactive as it's been over the course of the sort of past year, trying to determine if and when the town may be able to support a given betterment project.
Thank you. Attorney Cunningham.
Yeah, just to effectuate these changes as described by the town manager, this article seeks to amend Title III, Article 3 of our town's bylaws, specifically Sections 4, 5, and 6. I set forth in the materials that were provided and are available to the public. The amount of verbiage that's changed is not necessarily overly significant, but the changes are as described by the manager and intended to have the effect that make those changes.
Thank you. And could you, one of you, address the also proposed addition in Section 6 under assessment of costs that would add the words, the deposit requirement shall not apply to petitions or alternate petitions for repairs to private ways to be financed by the town through an instrument of borrowing or debt issuance?
Sure, I'm happy to address that, Mr. Chair. That was verbiage that I had drafted in trying to think about an instance where that 2/3 deposit threshold could potentially serve as a barrier to a betterment project. I thought about potentially some sort of massive project that could be advanced by one of our largest associations, maybe a Kelwin Manor or some larger share of the Tower Heights Association, where you could get a project cost that is going to be on the order of magnitude of hundreds of thousands of dollars or potentially $1 million. That would rise to the level of significance where the private way fund would never actually be able to support that as a cash payment, and in fact, we would need to borrow those funds. And through the Department of Revenue, if those funds are borrowed, and if the betterment assessments are paid through someone's taxes, those receipts can be specifically reserved by the town for the payment of the debt service associated with that borrowing or whatever the instrument or obligation was. So for a project of that nature, in fact, the upfront payment or the cash flow is not as critical to the town because a separate borrowing would be conducted. So I was trying to think ahead to not create some other preventative or more barrier issue in the future that might require an association to come up with $500,000 up front when it may not be necessary because we would be borrowing those funds. And despite not being able to establish an enterprise fund for this purpose, when it falls under a borrowing and it's for the debt service, that we would be able to reserve those receipts and use them to directly pay the borrowing costs.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just further note for the public's benefit that the town manager was referencing a table which was provided in the published agenda, a very helpful one that shows the upfront collection rate for recent projects. And I'll note that the average of that was 81% of projects going back to 2020. So the average has been 81% of the costs have been actually collected upfront. The range is from 67 all the way up to 93% actually. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to kind of get that out there for clarity. So I think how we'll do the hearings is first see if the board members have any questions to clarify the scope of this. Then I'll suggest open it up for public comment, and then I'll return to the board for further discussion and motions, if that's okay with my colleagues. All right. So any initial questions from the board to further elucidate? Okay, that was quick. So let's now turn to the public, and I think we may have some people in the room who'd like to come up to the table and speak to this. And if you are on Zoom, please raise your hand in Zoom if you want to speak to this warrant article. Good evening. So just introduce yourself and your place of residence, and thank you for this.
Sure, thank you, and I appreciate your considering these changes to these articles. My name's John Ross. I live in Arlington Heights on Stevens Terrace, and I'm a board member of the Arlington Heights Tower Association. And I just have a question about the last discussion regarding the 2/3 requirement of the upfront money and I guess what you were describing as someone's able to put their costs, what they would be attributed to them into their taxes over the course of 5 years. So does that, if I'm explaining this properly, account for, like, if someone commits to doing that, is that part of that 2/3 then? Is that for accounting purposes? Or how does that work?
Mr. Feeney?
So what you're describing is the assessment or the special assessment for the betterment would actually be not part of the 1/3 now or potentially 2/3 deposit. So the 2/3 is the amount of money that's going to be collected via upfront payments. And the folks who defer making an upfront payment then have that special assessment placed onto their taxes, and it is paid over the course of 5 years.
Okay, so regardless of the overall cost, if it's that's still $500,000, for example, I'm sorry, because I just didn't quite catch how that works in the two different scenarios. So is it?
Does it vary with the amount that somebody would pay in terms of the 2/3 upfront if they chose or
It's
were not able to do
2/3
that?
upfront of the total project cost.
And then the following third is financed?
Yes.
Over the 5 years?
So again, just looking at the total project cost and what needs to be collected as a minimum upfront, what we're proposing is 2/3 of the total project cost. And that may be some combination of some abutters not making any upfront contribution, as may be the case, and more likely, a number of abutters making a full 100% upfront contribution because they choose not to have it assessed over time, but the proposal is to make sure that 2/3 of the project cost is being collected upfront and not being apportioned on people's taxes over time. But that is not by household, but with respect on the aggregate to the total project.
Total amount, okay. All right, thanks. I think I understand that. And as far as the other changes made to the warrant articles, I think they're appropriate, and I'm on board with that, so thank you very much for that.
Mr. Ames, did you?
My name's Ben Ames. I live at 14 Hawthorne Avenue, also in Precinct 12. I'm a board member with John and with Chairman Helmuth on the Arlington Heights Tower Association. Also a town meeting member in Precinct 12. Just speaking more to the process for the amount of neighbors who are voting to approve these betterment projects, it really comes to, it affects a lot of different private ways in Arlington. It's a large percentage. I don't have it to hand of the town's streets, though.
About 25 miles.
25 miles, of which something like 2 miles, I think, are in the Arlington Heights Tower Association. It's almost 300 homes. And so, as referenced earlier, if it's a block or two, with 10 or 20 or 30 houses on it, that's a very different ratio of the number of residents that you'd need to get approval from. So it's kind of outgrown. The association is coming up on 100 years old, so it's sort of outgrown the initial bylaws, and this will make it a lot easier, especially as a lot of the general infrastructure continues to age. That the Tower Association has been there to sort of put Band-Aids on these streets over time, but the Band-Aids only last so long, and there's going to have to be some more long-lasting improvements. So the number of households that would have to approve it would make things a lot easier to get that done.
Thank you, gentlemen. Is there anybody else here in the room or on Zoom who wishes to comment on this article? Okay, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I will turn to the board for discussion. Mr. Hurd.
So just have I know we're supposed to have questions before, but questions as part of my comments. I just want to clarify, because, we've done a number of these, and I don't know if we've ever really got into the nitty-gritty of the law when we take these applications. And so I know there's obviously a 2/3 vote. 2/3 of the abutters are needed to move the application forward. And it was always my understanding that for every household, 1/3 was due for the project to be moved forward. But, Ms. Town Manager, are you saying that some residents can choose to put up nothing and just have the whole amount on their tax bill? They don't have to put up the 1/3?
Correct. The bylaw is silent on requiring that contribution from every household. Because if you think about the folks who may have voted no on the petition, if they withheld their 1/3, you could actually keep the private way betterment from ever moving forward.
Yeah. Well, my other question is going to be, how do you enforce that 1/3 if it's a requirement that each person come up with 1/3? That makes the warrant article, I'm 100% on board with the change regarding the neighborhood association. That makes sense. It makes the 2/3, that new information makes the 2/3 more palatable for me. As my concern with the 2/3 was that, in the event that there's someone that would, financially not in a position to, pay upfront costs, how would that affect their ability, neighborhood relations, for one thing, but, how that would affect them. But if, there's still an option for someone that doesn't have the ability to come up with the upfront costs, it would just be a weighted average, right? So, other neighbors would have to essentially come up with 100% of the cost in order to move forward. I mean, I get the intent. I'm still a little weary about 2/3. I think it's a big jump from 1/3. But I'll listen to my colleagues, I guess.
Mr. Gorsuch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the changes to group of private ways. I do have a question. I may talk to Attorney Cunningham after our vote. With the change in Section 4, I'm not sure Section 5 is necessary any longer because you're talking about abutters, but we can talk about that after the fact. I totally get the intent. We saw what the challenge was when you have a group of private ways voting on something. So I'm fine with voting in favor of that for now and then maybe having a discussion. I do have a similar concern on Section 6, and in talking to some neighbors, I live in Kellen Manor, and the individual in Kellen Manor who's responsible for the roads is Mr. Jack Hurd, and we talked about it a little bit recently, and a couple things. One, given the history where you're getting over 2/3 anyway, I understand increasing it from a third. I grow concerned that if we're over 50%, it may have a negative impact on the vote, that people will see the 2/3 right from the beginning, and there may be an issue. And, you know, let's face it, people who live on private ways, there is a sensitivity to paying for road betterment, because it's just been the way it is. People say, I pay the same taxes, but I have to pay for this. And, you know, we're past that. I think people understand it when they come before us. But I think seeing 2/3, even if it's a total project, I just am concerned that we're increasing this threshold where we're hitting the higher number anyway. And I'd throw it for discussion to the board, maybe using 50%. And I get going from 1/3 to 50, because there is a situation that if everybody followed the 1/3, there'd be an issue in terms of the number of roads that can be repaired. And the actual experience suggests that 50, we're always hitting that anyway. But I am concerned about going to 2/3. So I'm curious to see what other members think of that.
I would, so I would ask the town manager, I mean, what do you think is the impact of that versus 2/3?
So the impact is really timing for project planning purposes, because I think we can all agree the data shows that the collections will reach that level anyways. But if we take sort of Oldham Road, or perhaps the last one we considered, which was, I believe, one of the Montague streets, right? We don't know when we would actually be able to authorize that project until that project is said and done, and until every final bill is issued, and some number of weeks or months pass to see exactly how people are going to proceed with payment. So you could approve one project, and we may not know until the very end of that construction season what the collections are necessarily going to be at a minimum. So in effect, I would agree with Mr. DeCoursey that we know what we're going to collect, but it's a matter of knowing that up front when you're going to be approving a project, or at the start of construction season, versus having to wait until a project is completed, billed, and then seeing what it is that homeowners ultimately end up paying into the fund to know what could then be contributed to the next project. So it could just push, projects further back, as we had seen with Oldham and others. We say, okay, if you can meet this down payment threshold, then we can approve, and, you can proceed on this date. Otherwise, you'd have to wait for July 1 of calendar year 2024, or at least July 1 of calendar year 2025, and we might have to find a way to, if we've only been able to effectively seed this account with $100,000, we might have to find other years where we could potentially appropriate $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, or even, maybe $500,000 to have the adequate bandwidth to fully approve every project that's coming before the board. So I think, but in response, I would say really any increase in the guaranteed down payment will just provide more stability and clarity as to how far the town, through the board, can stretch the dollars that live within the private way account at that point in time, because it gives clarity to what will take place even when the project is done, because you will have collected that money up front.
And now, my recollection probably isn't the best. I don't think I have a really big sample size, because I've been on the board for less than all but one person. My sense though is that the resistance that I hear to the betterments are more like they just don't want their roads to get faster. Now maybe those who don't sign up are resisting on funds. Let me rephrase that. Those who we don't hear from are maybe resisting on affordability. But usually I'm hearing that people like me, we like our roads slow. If you make it better, it'll be faster and less safe. So I hear your concern, but I don't know if that's going to be a big factor in making it harder for people who want betterments to get it. But once again, I don't think it's certainly not a scientific study, so that's all.
Mr.
I just respond, I don't think in any betterment here, and I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but I don't think anyone has come up and just said they didn't want to pay, so sometimes, I think generally people would like better roads, and I don't know, I would say that the argument that repaving the road makes it less safe is something that you hear just in lieu of someone saying that they don't want to pay for their betterment.
All right.
Mrs. Mahan.
The question at hand regarding the 2/3 or 67% or 50%. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I've never lived on a private way or had a close collaboration, association, with the Tower Association, with Kellen Manor, or upper end, lower end of Montague. So part of me was thinking, okay, if you look at the numbers from 2020 to current, we're getting 2/3 anyways. But then I also understand that compiled in that, when I looked at those numbers, it's not that all the neighbors are giving 2/3, it's, anywhere, something over 50% are paying 100% up front. So that's where, because when I first saw that, I was saying, well, everybody's already paying 2/3. Well, it's not that. Some are taking the option of having something assessed to all assessed 5 years on their tax bill. And then there's someone similar to my husband that would say, well, I'm just paying it all up front. I don't want it on the tax bill. I don't know if there's interest to be paid and things like that. So I was fine with the 2/3, but and I'm not saying this in a sarcastic way or anything, it's just I have nothing to draw upon. But the point that if we have 2/3, 67% versus 1/2, 50%, it could be an impediment that if someone sees the 2/3 number, that it would make harder for the petitioners, the association, et cetera, to get the necessary support to apply. I guess my thing is, what do we weigh? Being able to better financially plan so more streets can get in the queue and get done more expeditiously if you go with the 2/3 or the 50%. So I'm fine with either number. I mean, I was okay with the 2/3, but if those who have been through the process feel that going out, doing the groundwork, seeing the 2/3 number is going to make it so much harder, or perhaps to the detriment of the project, they think the 50% is better. I'd really, so I'm still going back and forth on it. I was all set for 2/3, but if that's the case, I'm fine with doing 50%. And then there's nothing, we don't have a 2-year rule that there's nothing precluding us that if we did a 50%, that if the following year we decided to say, okay, we can now put it up to 2/3, we can do that legally. Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Mahan. Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
so I'd like to see either Mr. DeCoursey or Mr. Hurd, or even Mr. Diggins, but I'm not prepared to make the motion. I'll go with whatever you think is
Very good.
best.
I'll make a couple of remarks as well to either add to the discussion, we'll see if it's constructive. But as Mr. Ames mentioned, I happen to also be a board member of the Tower Association, and I'll disclose that just because, this applies to any resident of any private way. It's not a particular matter of the association, so I don't feel there's a conflict, but it does inform my own work. I'd actually like to invite Mr. Ross to speak, if you have any thoughts about this, because I believe, sir, you've helped organize an attempt at a project on your street and a couple of others that was one of the circumstances that sort of led to the awareness, the town manager's awareness that we needed to fix the association. But do you have a view based on your recent organizing the extent to which if you told people that, we got to, all together, all of us have to put 2/3 up front versus 1/3 up front, how much of a difference that would make in the circumstances that you've been in.
Yeah, thank you. So you're exactly right. So we underwent, myself and some of my colleagues, neighbors, trying to get a handful of streets to be essentially rebuilt because they're in dramatic disrepair. And so it's going to be pretty expensive. We calculated the number of streets, the 3 streets we had sort of collected together. In the end, the cost, and we put it out we got 3 different bids, and it was going to be about $5,000 per household. And we got good agreement. Almost 100% of everyone that we actually talked to was on board with wanting to go forward. But the complication was the way the bylaws were written. We couldn't do all 3 streets together. But I think as far as the 2/3 versus 1/3 versus half, I like the idea that someone can put the whole thing onto their, basically finance it through their taxes over the course of 5 years. I think getting everyone to commit to at least 1/3 was somewhat of a, higher bar versus someone that doesn't want to pay anything can be like, okay, I'll put it on my taxes versus the other people that will pay 100%. So I think not having to require someone to pay, even 1/3 up front can help people, because there's people that have lived in this neighborhood for their whole lives, and, they're on their fixed income, and they don't have, frankly, $5,000 to just shell out. And so I think that helps in that respect. 2/3 is still pretty high. And when I did see that, when I was reviewing the documents yesterday or the day before, that did give me some pause. We can probably manage it. I think if it's going to be the difference between, we can't even do the project for another couple of years because the town can't commit to, having that much money to finance, I'd rather have the 2/3 commitment than delay it for another couple of years. 50% is better if we can manage 50%, and we can maybe the next year put more money into the pot and revisit the 50 to 7, their 2/3. So, I'm not being very helpful because I'm wavering, but
Well, that's good.
that's
good.
sort of my
Thank
perspective.
you for that. And it's a little unconventional, but I know we had somebody in the room who has been through this, so we could get some perspective on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, I appreciate it. And it is, the neighbors are good. Everyone sees the condition of the roads, and so they want it done, but it's expensive.
Understood. Okay, so I think at this point, I want to see if my colleagues want to make a motion. I will just say for myself, I have a similar tension. I think that I have a great sympathy for the town manager's instincts towards predictability and financial, and then I also, as somebody who has helped organize these, do have some concerns about just the optics and how much that sort of affect getting the vote of if people feel like, oh, we all have to put this up, even if you explain that it's an aggregate. So, I could probably go either way on it as well. I also say too, just getting a motion on the table, I have a technical question or two about the language too that I might offer as a friendly amendment when we get there, but it's less substantive.
Can I ask a question before the motion?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so there's the notion that we could go from 50 to 2/3. We could also go 2/3 to 50, right? So if we went to 2/3 and we said this isn't working out for a reason, we could come down to 50. I imagine. So, but I guess there's kind of like the issue of, is it really as easy to come down as it is to go up, or is it really as easy, to go up? Once you start at a lower level, I can imagine it's harder to come down once you go up. But maybe you could speak to that, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. I'm not sure I would have, a strong inclination one way or the other. Obviously, going up or down, it would just take a subsequent vote of, select board and then ultimately town meeting to make some further adjustment to the bylaw, but I think what we're really, right, like board's just trying to strike a balance between ensuring that the town has adequate funds to support these projects that are coming forward with greater frequency and not having to turn people away or create uncertainty and say, well, check back next week and we'll see how much the folks from the other project have paid and how much money we have, if we can then put you on, an agenda versus having it appear, like an overly burdensome threshold where it would deter folks from even pursuing. And, I wouldn't venture to know sort of what that experience has been like with petitioners. I just know we generally see people either pay in full for the most part, or people don't pay at all, either because they don't have the ability to pay anything, or more likely that they intend on moving out of the home sometime fairly soon, so they can get to benefit from it, but you'll put it on your taxes and the next person to buy the home will inherit that special assessment. So we see mostly like you pay it all or you're paying none. There isn't quite as much as like paying some upfront unless everyone was doing the equal 1/3 and then sort of apportioning the rest on their taxes. So when it's treated in the aggregate, we see sort of the two extremes oftentimes.
That's it, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Hurd.
I think,
Well, I just,
Jay, no?
I thought, ask.
I was just
Oh,
gonna
Ms.
know
Mark?
that there's a hand raised,
Oh, okay,
but
yeah, do you want to, do you want to hear that comment, or,
Okay.
okay, oh, it's, would you bring in the commenter, please?
I haven't talked to him about this.
I was waiting to see what your comment was first, and then I was gonna
This
tell
is,
you it was
this
your
is,
dad.
this is also Select Board Alumni Night, apparently,
Yeah.
with respect to public comment, so. Good evening, Mr. Hurd, you may unmute yourself and put yourself on camera.
Mute.
That'll work.
Okay, did I do it correctly?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay, am I in? Sorry.
Yep, go right ahead.
All right, it's Jack Hurd, Precinct 2. And as Steve DeCoursey mentioned, I'm the roads chair for the Kellam Manor Association. So I've had a number of conversations with a couple of our board members and the town manager. I just want to first thank the town manager for being proactive in working on this, which has created problems over the years with funding and others. But I think, looking at it from a larger project like we have in Kellam Manor, the 2/3 would be difficult. And just hypothetically, I would say if we did a vote in Kellam Manor, let's say 80% said they were interested in reconstructing the roads. That means that probably 90%, from just rough math, would need to put up 100%. And that, to me, would be problematic. And because I think there'll be a number of people, particularly elderly, that are in support of redoing the roads, but just can't come up with the, in our case, it would be probably $7,000 to $10,000 a home. And they would like to use the 5-year plan on their taxes. They're not doing it just because they don't want to participate, but it's just a matter of necessity. So I think the 50% number may certainly help the town manager achieve his goal, which I think is a good idea, but perhaps not so difficult for those that may not have the ability to pay. The other suggestion I was going to make is that, and we would understand that in the Kellam Manor, because we're hoping to do our roads at some point in the near future. I think the understanding that a project that large would likely take more than a year. We would understand that. Maybe it would take 3 years. And I would suggest that if possible, the language could require that I'm having my camera adjusted here, that a project that large would require planning in the sense of budgeting. So perhaps if petitioners would be required for example, at least a year in advance or 2 years in advance. So that would get you through the budget season so you can appropriate whatever the petitions are for that particular year. You're going to have a rough idea of what you would ask town meeting to appropriate. I mean, it's all funds that would be paid back to the town with interest. So, and I'm not sure if that's possible, but I think I would again suggest that a number less than 2/3 may be more advantageous for those that can't afford it.
Thank you, sir. The other Mr. Hurd, proceed with that information.
There's a lot of pressure now. No, I was just gonna say, also, just regarding the numbers that we're looking at, where everyone, in the past few projects, more people have come up with the 2/3. In the past few projects, we've told them that you can't go forward unless you can pay more than the required 1/3 that's in the bylaw. And I think I just fear that there's unintended consequences, that if we go to 2/3, there is a group, maybe a smaller association or in a smaller street that wants to do it, but then they see what they have to come up with and they just don't have, other abutters who are willing to come up with the additional funds, and it prevents the project from happening. And it can always pay more than 2/3, right? So if we put it at 2/3, more than a half. So say we set it at half, someone can pay 2/3, but if we set it at 2/3, they can't pay half, right? So it makes it more restrictive, and so I think from all the discussions that we're having, it makes more sense, where we can, if we go to 50%, it doesn't solve the problem, and there's still backlogs of issues and, logistical issues with getting these projects done, we can revisit this into the 2/3, but I'd rather see the incremental step up to the 2/3 if that's what, and it could be that that's what we need to be, but I think if we do the 50%, then we can, like we like to do pilots in this board, we can see how the 50% goes, and then we can go from there. This seems like a complicated motion, but
Make it.
we'll move positive action of the recommended updates to the language with the one edit whereby the requirement for 2/3 of the upfront cost be paid at the time before the project starts be amended to 50% of the estimated project costs.
Mrs. Mahan.
I will definitely second that, and I just would say, just in the next anticipated coming years, with the next year fiscal year, looking at about a $1 million deficit, I would not be in favor of increasing the $100,000 in the near future. However, I agree with the 50%, and I understand the rationale of the 2/3 for better planning to allow more streets, neighbors associations to come in. I think also if for some reason that does become a detriment, that might be another reason why we do go from the 50 in the following year or years to a 2/3. But I'm agreeing with starting with the 50, but I understand that, the rationale, the way it came to me was, better planning for the future. Otherwise, as we anticipate more streets, areas are going to come in and ask for this, the only other answer to that is putting more than the 100,000 in there, and I don't see how we do that with all the other things that we have in terms of our priorities and our override commitment. So I'm in favor of that, and maybe in year 2 or 3, part of the reason for if we do increase it beyond 50% would be because we need to plan better to get more streets done sooner. So I'll second that.
Thank you. Just a quick question for the town manager. To clarify the question by my colleague, Mrs. Mahan, $100,000 is significant in terms of the cash flow for the budget any given year. But just, my understanding is that that's not an appropriation by the town, but that would be money the town would eventually get back?
it still needs to be
But
appropriated.
so it's technically an appropriation, right? But it's-
We appropriate.
We appropriate, but would the idea be that that would be paid back with?
Gets
or is
paid
that- or
back
is that a
over,
contribution?
yeah, gets paid back over the course of 5 years and essentially gets
Right.
certified as free cash because it's not otherwise being accounted for.
Yeah, but we can't spend public money on private way repairs by definition. But yeah, I understand that that does create yeah, okay, that's fine. Any other comments from the board? I have a couple questions, one for Attorney Cunningham. Actually, two. So at the end of section 5 in your markup, there's some language right in the last 2 lines of section 5. And, you know, that final paragraph that starts, "The select board may only consider." There's stricken language that say which abut all the ways represented by the association, so that's the change we want. But the second, the sentence that starts, "All of the abutters on all of the ways represented shall be given written notice." And I wonder if that's a little bit ambiguous, that could be read into my inexpert eyes, legally speaking, as being all the ways in the association or all the ways that are in the petition. So I would suggest, with the consent of Mr. Hurd, that we can, in the final vote, that we consider either striking that phrase or clarifying that so that it's clear that it means all of the ways in the petition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think that's a good suggestion. I think that's a good question, and as long as it's okay with the moving party, Mr. Hurd. And I also think that Mr. DeCourcy's larger question is also good about the changes to Section 4 and its impact at large to Section 5, so.
Right, if we even need it,
I think
yeah.
with the final draft, the votes and comments, I think those issues could be addressed while still respecting the board's sentiment and not changing the intent, at least as I understand it from the board, about groups of private ways and certainly moving down to a 50% allocation.
That makes a lot of sense. One final question is something that I've thought about and other people working on this have thought about, is while we're working on this bylaw and before town meeting, there could be something to be said for the petition being executed electronically. Is that something that would require a bylaw change if we were to do that?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
it may, depending on how it's done. I did talk to, I know that we got a couple residents here tonight, and I also want to credit resident Neil Spellmeyer, who was also involved and very helpful in this process. I spoke to him a couple of times. It probably doesn't, but I think the final answer on that would depend on how that change is implemented. We did try and look at that for this go-round, and it just didn't seem possible.
Yeah, I think, you know, to me, I have some interest in that just because I think that the safety valve or and all this is the same one that exists now, and that is that if we're still mailing a notice to all the abutters, they're going to find out. So, you know, if there's anything accidental that happens with with an electronic petition that would go wrong, and you know, it's not like it's going to go through with people being completely surprised. They're still going to get the notices by the board. I guess I would ask my colleagues if there's any interest or opposition to asking Attorney Cunningham to include that in the final vote. Any objection or anyone excited about it either way?
I'm fine.
Well, it's hard to get excited about electronic signatures, but
Speak for yourself.
I'm happy to include that in the final vote and accept the suggested amendments.
Okay. Mrs. Mahoney, okay with these friendly amendments as well? Okay. All right, so we'll ask Attorney Cunningham to consider that in the final vote as well. So
I will, Mr. Chair, thank you.
you're getting your money's worth on this warrant article, sir. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote then. So we have a motion for favorable action with the amendments as discussed by Mr. Hurd and seconded by Mrs. Mahan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 vote in favor. Thanks to all. Okay, now we have Article 12, bylaw amendment, John J. Bill for Arlington Citizens Scholarship Fund. We having a presentation by our treasurer. Welcome, Ms. Julie Wayman, the treasurer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening, Julie Wayman, town treasurer. So I believe you all have language from our town council in relation to this article. This is just a small amendment that we are requesting, which is just looking for a little bit of flexibility around the committee makeup. So I'm sure you all already know, but the makeup of the committee is the principal of Arlington High School, the principal of Arlington Catholic High School, and the superintendent of Minuteman High School, Regional Vocational School District. So we are just looking to add the language, his or her, or their designee, to the town bylaw, just to add a little bit of flexibility around the committee makeup, allowing for, meeting attendance and participation. So we did have a committee meeting just a couple of months ago and took a vote, and a unanimous vote in support of this warrant article. So just looking to see if we have your support tonight.
Thank you very much. Attorney Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that the section that our town treasurer is speaking about is in section 4, to add the designee. That's an option that will be available only to permanent members. And I do note that this proposed amendment is properly forwarded to this board pursuant to section 8 of that bylaw, where it was voted on and approved.
Thank you, sir. Let's quickly see if there's anybody in the public who wishes to comment on this warrant article. If you wish to comment on Article 12, please raise your hand in Zoom or in the room. Seeing none? All right. Well, now I'll turn to the board.
Move favorable action.
Okay. Have a second?
I'll second it, but it'll get on the consent agenda, it'll get pulled off. Just saying.
Any discussion? Okay, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
I feel like someone should say that. On a motion by favorable action by Mr. Hurd and seconded by Mr. Diggins, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? 5-0 vote. Thank you very much. All right. Brings us to Article 13, bylaw amendment, leaf blower dates of transition. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before the board this evening is actually a requested vote of no action. Had initially submitted this warrant article on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services when soliciting all department heads for potential warrant articles for consideration, inserted a placeholder into the warrant, but in subsequent meetings, in follow-up after the publish of the warrant to describe potential changes in the potential language, it was not found that there was an actual change that we agreed or wished to pursue further at this session. So with respect to that, I would request the board consider taking no action on this particular warrant article.
Thank you very much. I will turn to, well, first of all, we will see if there's any members of the public who wish to comment. If you wish to comment on Article 13, please raise your hand, virtually or otherwise. Okay, now I will turn to the board.
I'll let somebody else make a motion.
I'll go this side of the table. Mr. Diggins, you look like you're due.
I will make a motion of no action on this article.
Second.
The right side of the room has it here. Okay, any discussion? A motion by Mr. Diggins and seconded by, for no action, seconded by Mr. DeCoursey. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 vote. Thank you very much. Go back to the left side for the next one. We have Article 56, the local option acceptance of MGL Chapter 203C, the prudent investor rule.
Sounds like
Is
a good
that,
rule.
Yeah, it sounds good in the face of it.
It's a lot
It
better
looks
than
like
the
that's
crappy
the town
investor
treasurer
rule.
again. Welcome.
Thank you, Julie Wayman, Town Treasurer. We are submitting this article in hopes to ask town meeting to support this change to how our trust funds are invested. So this has been something prior to my time that the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds was very much interested in, looking to broaden how our trust funds are invested. This is also something that the Mass Collector Treasurer Association, the MCTA, was also asking the state to look into for a number of years. And so the state has now adopted this change, and so we are hoping that we'll get your support along with town meetings to look to be able to broaden how we are investing our trust funds.
Thank you very much. All right, now we will turn to the public for any comment on Article 56. Raise your hand if you wish to comment.
Seeing no hands raised.
Seeing no hands in Zoom, all right, well, who doesn't like prudent investments? Let's find out. Mr. Hurd.
I was gonna say, hopefully we're not imprudently investing our town trust funds right now. Move favorable action.
Second one question.
Yes, ma'am.
It's okay if you don't have an estimate, but do you have, in terms of the trust fund monies, approximately what that number is?
Do you mean right now, or do you mean if were we to change how we're investing?
Both.
Off the
Either.
top of my head, no.
Okay, I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay, call me
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Or the day after.
Sure.
Mr. Diggins.
So I'm definitely in favor of this. What is something that what is the vehicle that you could use with this that you can't use now?
So right now, our monies are invested on what's called the legal list. So it's a much more narrow list of funds. So it really just doesn't allow for much risk, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But the prudent investor rule still requires you to keep in mind safety, liquidity, and
Yeah.
yield.
Right.
We work with Rockland there, who actually invests our funds through the trust funds. They, amongst other institutions, support this change as well. But they are still required to keep in mind what we have down in terms of investing policy. So safety being the number one, safety of our funds. So, you know, it's they do call it the prudent investor because you are supposed to still, you know, ensure that you are making prudent choices, but allowing for a little bit more flexibility. I mean, even the library commissioners have reached out to me, you know, within the first 30 days of me starting as treasurer to ask about how their funds were being invested and asking about a little more risk, you know, looking to bring in a little bit more, you know, a little bit more in their funds, seeing a little bit more revenue. So, it seems as though certainly I don't think we're going to go, we're not looking to make any crazy investments, but something to bring in potentially a little bit more risk.
Yeah,
and
I
hopefully see a
wasn't
little-
concerned about the safety. I was just wondering what the actual instruments are. I mean, I'll maybe have to look at the legislation myself, because I know if some people, if you say like option already, I mean, they're scared. And if you say sell a shorted option in order to scale into an instrument, they're like, you got to be crazy. But I often think that's the best way to like get into something. It's like, you know, you sell short the put option. I'm sorry, I missed that. You sell short the put option. You wait for it to come down, you know, you snag it at a lower price, but if it doesn't come down, you get to collect that premium, you know. But anyway.
Yes, I don't think that we're going to be moving in that direction, but we will work with Rockland
Okay.
when we are moving.
Okay.
A little bit more.
All right, you know, yes, you know.
Attorney Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the answer to Mr. Diggins's question lies within Section 54 of Chapter 54. It talks about securities and other limitations and what it's going to permit trust funds where it can go. So that there are specific, I won't read all of it, but that it's in that particular statute.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So we have, and we did public comment? Yes, we did, all right. So we have a motion for favorable action by Mr. Hurd and seconded by Mrs. Mahan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? 5-0 vote. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to new business, about which I say the following. Except in cases of emergency, the board will neither deliberate nor act upon topics presented in new business. And we'll start in our usual order with Board Administrator Ms. Marr.
No new business, thank you.
Attorney Cunningham.
No new business, thank you.
Jim Feeney.
No new business, thank you.
Mr. Feeney. Mrs. Mahan.
No, thank you.
Mr. Hurd. Mr. DeCoursey.
No new business.
Mr. Diggins.
I have all these items that you want to add to the next two meetings, but no business.
And I have no new business. It might be a record.
That's with the flow.
That's right.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Mrs. Mahan, was seconded, I think, first by Mr. Diggins.
Everybody.
Everybody, yeah. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.